this point, I think most of us know that the media lies. That's why they were so triggered by the hashtag media lies. So I have to say, I have a bachelor's degree in public relations, and I took a bunch of journalism courses when I was working on it. Honestly, I had no interest in journalism. I've always been more interested in the social science behind mass media than the reporting itself. But hey, I know the basic principles as a result of my education, so I'm going to go over them with you. First, to get a degree in a journalism-related field in the journalism department of my, again, Catholic university, so I can't speak for other institutions, was that all students were required to take 2 courses on ethics in journalism. This shit was hammered into our brains because anyone who knows anything about the media, who knows the very basic theories of agenda setting, priming, and framing, knows how the media can be misused. Obviously, media psychology is vastly more complex, but those are the 3 basics that everyone pretty much learns in a journalism department, or in a communication department. Simply speaking, at least traditionally, the media has set the agenda. Whatever the media was talking about is what people thought about. Now people tend to get into these filter bubbles with new media, and this is being exacerbated by shit like Twitter and Facebook that will make sure no wrong think gets into your feed, but the position of a journalist has traditionally been a respected and powerful one. Your job is to bring the truth to the masses, and sadly, that's no longer the case. So anyway, these are the 9 core principles of journalism from Kovach and Rosenstiel. 1. Journalism's first obligation is to tell the truth. 2. Journalism's first loyalty is to its citizens. 3. The essence of journalism is a discipline of verification. 4. Journalists must maintain an independence from those they cover. 5. Journalists must serve as an independent monitor of power. 6. Journalism must provide a forum for public criticism and comment. 7. Journalists must make the significant, interesting, and relevant. 8. Journalists should keep the news in production and make it comprehensive. 9. Journalists have an obligation to personal conscience. I fail to see the average reporter engage in almost any of these behaviors. And do you know what I find particularly offensive about that? Because I'm fairly sure that it's not just my silly, moral-focused Catholic education that forced me to take 2 courses where I had things like that repeatedly brought up. I'm pretty sure just about every journalism program on the planet requires their students to take at least 1 course on ethics. That means this isn't just clueless behavior. This is a flagrant disrespect for what was once a very highly respected institution. I almost cringe to admit that I have a public relations degree on my CV because of how worthless the very title of a journalist has become. Luckily, I was in another program in the department, and I had so many prereqs, I only needed like 20 additional hours in journalism to get the PR degree, so at least it wasn't a great waste of my time. Anyway, what I wanted to talk to you about today, folks, is the lying media and why they lie. They lie because they have a narrative and a political agenda, and they know, because as I've said, because they were taught it, how powerful the news can be at influencing people, particularly when they enforce that no other information contrary to their narrative be discussed. And that is why the new media terrifies them. And that is why Trump terrifies them. Because in regards to some people like me, or Sargon, or Stefan Molly meme, or Paul Joseph Watson, there is nothing they can do to control our voices, which are not going to stop the destruction of their precious narrative with facts, logic, and just a fucking ounce of integrity. So what I specifically wanted to mention and to bring up, just to show how pervasive this mindset is among the media, is this. On February 22nd, the, of course, totally transparent journos at MSNBC accidentally slipped up and told the truth. That they are not in the business of reporting on reality, but rather information gatekeepers and dispensary of bias and spin, who are afraid and shaking in their boots about Donald Trump because of his ability to undermine their chokehold on political knowledge. Let's listen.
He's doing, what are you so surprised about? He's doing exactly what he said he's going to do.
Well, and I think that the dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
That's right, they are afraid because if Trump has the ability to do what the media does by using the psychological effects of agenda setting, priming, and framing, they will no longer be able to control the minds of the American people, because that is their job. Now, the woman who said this, Mika Brzezinski, of course was quick to claim that that's not what she said, taking to Twitter to cry, "Today, I said it's the media's job to keep President Trump from making up his own facts, not that it is our job to control what people say." And, of course, that is obvious from the transcript, but some people want to make up their own facts. Sad. First of all, you reprobate shrew. That is our word. You're not allowed to use it like that. That is shitlord cultural appropriation, and you're a fucking white female. Secondly, let's take a look at the transcript, shall we? I know I just played it for you, but let's look at it. So, yeah, they actually straight up admitted it. I know they're denying it now, but they admitted it. Absolutely. It is the job of the legacy media to decide not just what people think about a la traditional agenda setting, but to determine everything they think by silencing alternative sources, through intimidation and discreditation, by failing to report on stories that disturb their narrative, by outright lying, because these media gatekeepers simply know better than you and are better than you and need to tell the ignorant yokels how to think, lest they be confused by facts. There's countless examples of media double standards and spin and outright lies from this last election cycle. Right now, Project Veritas has released 119 hours of supposedly behind-the-scenes footage from CNN, which equally rancid dumpster fire Politico has, of course, less than 24 hours later claimed is fake. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Anyway, Veritas is offering a $10,000 reward for physical proof of rigged polling. However, one has to be curious what more proof they could possibly hope to uncover that isn't already overwhelmingly evident from the polls they reported on publicly. Is there even a possibility that the MSM wasn't oversampling Democrats? Look, I'm going to give you a quick and elementary, but hopefully very succinct lesson on how inaccurate sampling affects the real world. First, cue the music. So, in 1987, Playboy was going around to college campuses to find the #1 party school for the first time, as they would continue to do, as would other sources continue to do, such as the Princeton Review. When the Playboy people contacted the president of West Virginia University about setting up a time and place to poll students, President Neil Bucklew said they could, show up whenever, and should just set up in front of the student union. So here's what happened. Playboy showed up the first day after spring break to poll the students in front of the student union. What's not obvious about that, if you've never been to WVU, is that the majority of the academic buildings surrounding the union are liberal arts. The engineering and medical campuses are on the other side of town. As such, what the Playboy pollsters found were a bunch of stumbling, drunk, or hungover English and philosophy majors shouting, "Spring break," and such. West Virginia University was named one of the top party schools in the United States, and subsequently has attracted for decades students more interested in partying than studying, and as such has remained a top party school. It may have been a big party school before that, but this error in misrepresentative sampling certainly ensured that they would always remain known as a party school from then on, and it has frequently topped the list in subsequent polling of #1 party schools. This is how inaccurate polling can produce real-world outcomes, and that was the attempt being made by the legacy media in reporting statistics from a skewed sample. They wanted to make Trump supporters feel so hopeless that they would just stay home and not bother to vote. Yes, the left, who has always been on board with this rock the vote thing, something I wouldn't have a problem with if it didn't have an obvious bias. It's the leftist media who was trying to encourage Trump voters to just not bother wasting their time to go vote for a man who was surely to lose. And because we know that misrepresentative statistics can affect people's behavior, no wonder they were dumbfounded when Trump won with a landslide in the Electoral College. A more recent example of the absolute bias and hypocrisy is over this Milo versus George Takei pedo shit. Look, let me preface this with my opinions regarding George Takei. I am arguably one of the biggest Trekkies you will ever meet. I mean, I'm the kind of person who speaks at least a passing amount of Vulcan, Difturismusma. Yeah, I'm that kind of nerd. Particularly, I grew up with the original series, and it has an extremely close place to my heart. I didn't even go to work the day that Leonard Nimoy died, because I was despondent, and because Spock was my hero and my first real reason to want to become a scientist. But that doesn't stop me from being able to separate my childhood affections for characters like Hikaru Sulu and virtue-signaling lefty cuck George Takei. If you want to know what Takei has done since Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, the answer is not much. Crying about the Japanese internment. Don't get me wrong, that was pretty horrible, but that's sort of been his life's work. Other than that, he just spends his time spreading weak, half-baked political messages on Facebook. Just last week, folks, this dude took down a poll that he had put up for his fans to signal their own virtue about how Donald Trump is a bigger problem than media corruption, and he was happy to watch as hundreds of like-minded leftist followers voted the way he wanted them to. But as night descended, the right-wing meme squad appeared with their hate frogs, and started to vote for the corrupt media. The second the poll reached 50-50, Takei deleted it and then bragged about supposedly blocking a bunch of virgin trolls. Yep, anyone who disagrees with you is just a troll. Good going, Georgie. So I made a whole video on Milo's pedo allegations, and I said in that video, listen to his statements, read his response, listen to the press conference, and judge him for yourself. I will restate what I said, which is this. I think he has experienced a lot of trauma, and similarly to many victims of child assault, has a very warped way of coping with that trauma, which also likely caused him to become involved in pederasty and not see it as an inherently bad thing. I don't agree with that, and I do think he should probably talk to a therapist or something. Then again, the ancient Greeks didn't have a problem with pederasty, so judge him for yourself. Of course, the media has absolutely lambasted Milo, calling him a straight-up pedophile. The issue is that now a video has surfaced from the Howard Stern show where George Takei talks about himself being involved with a camp counselor who was 18 or 19, when he himself was 13, an encounter that he described as both wonderful and scary and kind of intimidating and delightful.
Oral sex on you?
It was a hand job.
Hand job, yeah. Right.
But did he, I mean, any kissing?
Yes, oh, yeah.
Oh, sure. Well, who wants a hand job without kissing?
Well, I don't know how these things work.
And did you have multiple affairs with him during the summer? Was this
No,
one of many liaisons?
You know, you're not quite sure. You know, it was both wonderful and scary and kind of intimidating and delightful. I mean, all those opposites, you know.
Right.
And
were you
I wasn't
pining
sure.
away for him all summer?
Well, you know, that occasion never occurred. But it was there was an element of scariness at the same time because you're very young, and you know, the whole thing is. I mean,
You think he was worried you would tell other people?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Had you had an orgasm before?
No, that was the first time.
Wow.
First time.
So that is scary.
Yeah, that was.
Did you beat off the rest of the summer?
No.
No.
Yes, it was back home, not at camp.
And he was your only one that summer?
He was the only one.
And you didn't share this information with anybody else?
I didn't share it with anybody else until this morning when Sal's mind is. I hadn't thought of that for a long, long time, and he dredged that out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those opposites. He also directly states that it was consensual and not molestation, something very similar to what Milo described. And yet, is the media up in arms, demanding that Takei lose his Pizza Hut and Taco Bell sponsorship? Nope, not a peep. Not a peep about it. A few smaller outlets, sure, they're talking about it, but nothing from the mainstream media. This is, of course, skew through agenda setting. It's part of our agenda to take down right-leaning provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos, essentially force him to resign from Breitbart, and lose his book deal over allegations of what he describes as consensual sex between himself, 17, and a 29-year-old, but it's just not in the script to castigate beloved lefty social media god for describing positively what he describes as a consensual sexual encounter between himself, 13, and an 18 or 19-year-old. Now, I find it all equally disturbing, don't get me wrong, but apparently it's only wrong when it was actual rape, as it was in Milo's case. Do you see the obvious lie of omission here? Oh, and as a last note on this, yeah, since Milo has been getting all of this hate, Salon, owned by the Washington Post, has conveniently deleted the article they published from Todd Nickerson, Pedophilia, a Disorder, Not a Crime, the very article that Milo called out on his response article on Breitbart. Ah, the transparent media. Oh wait, one more thing. Mika Brzezinski, the cunt who admitted that the media is out to control your mind, she also shit on Milo and called him, a Jew, an anti-Semite. Again, you can't make this shit up. Another recent example about how the media will twist and distort the truth to set the agenda and maintain narrative was the massive backlash against Donald Trump's statement last night in Sweden. Let's watch.
You look at what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
The best theory for what he was talking about is a segment on Fox News from Friday night.
Perhaps no nation on earth is more committed to accepting foreign migrants and refugees than Sweden.
Do you see the violence really spreading across Sweden into the cities?
At least 1 or 2 times a week.
It's a very political film suggesting that refugees are bringing lots of violence and threats to Sweden. So perhaps President Trump saw that segment on Friday and was referring to that being last night because that would have been Friday night.
Because, astoundingly, there hadn't been a terrorist attack the previous night in Sweden. I know, shocking, right? But the problem was to change the narrative to stop people from investigating what's going on in Sweden and instead just focus on this incorrect statement that Trump made. This was nothing more than an attempt to get the narrative back on track. That is because Sweden, the country that Bernie Sanders frequently held up as a bastion of effective socialism, is burning. And because of the progressive, Islamophilic actions of their politicians is living, active proof of the ultimate outcome of regressive politics. Since 2015, sexual assault is up 20% and rape is up 30% and has been going up since Sweden started accepting hundreds of thousands of supposedly Syrian refugees, actually economic migrants, from countries like Afghanistan and Somalia. Countries where if a woman doesn't wear a headscarf, she deserves to be raped. Watch my video on feminism and Islam for more information. But of course, you can't point out these statistics because there is no direct correlation between migrants and rape. But do you know why? Because Sweden stopped collecting information on the race or immigration status of perpetrators. Again, spin and lies of omission. I watched Hard Bastards video today where Don Lemon lied hideously at Amy Horowitz, a guy who was physically assaulted.
I know, but why? Why?
I just don't want to spawn, you know.
But why?
Let me see. Let me see.
I'm not filming anything. Look.
Show me what you got.
Let go of me.
Show me what you got.
Show me.
Show me your phone.
Let go. I'll show you.
I don't want your phone. Show me.
Let go now.
And not the first journalist to have been, just for filming in a Swedish ghetto. Self-ghettoized, by the way, by migrants themselves because you cannot have real facts that buck the narrative on CNN. Please check out Hard Bastards' video for a great breakdown of this specific instance of disingenuous media clutching their pearls at statistics that aren't approved by INGSOC, and Amy Horowitz's short documentary, which was in fact what Trump was referring to when he said last night in Sweden, as he has clarified, regarding an interview with Amy on Tucker Carlson's show. It is 10 minutes long. It is a great introductory piece to those new to what happens every night in Sweden these days. I think Hard Bastards' video is something like 55 minutes long, so a bit more of a time investment, but check it out if you have the time. Besides Naked Ape, he's pretty much my favorite YouTuber because he absolutely decimates the legacy media. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about framing. Look at how HuffPo described Donald Trump's recent press conference. Was he unpresidential? Sure. Has he ever been presidential? No. But he didn't have a meltdown. He shut down fake news like Huffington Post, but they can't be honest because they have to control what people think, and what people think must be in line with their politics. Donald Trump is an unhinged fascist dictator without an iota of intelligence, and if you get any inkling that he isn't, you need to be re-educated. And where is the evidence that you're wrong thinking? Why, just look at the headlines. So let's go over some examples and see just how fucking fake the news is these days through the lies, be they of omission or blatant by the misrepresentation of facts, or by their meretricious hypocrisy and double standards. I could have just done a montage, but I want to say a word or two about all of them. I've got a bunch of these saved, so they're not really going to be in any temporal order, so I apologize for a bit of the disorganization in the timeline. Away we go! So Donald Trump falsely claims that Clinton gave 20% of US uranium to Russia, says CNBC, traditionally fairly reputable news source, right? And yet this New York Times article from about a year before admits that the Hill Dog did in fact sell 1/5, that's 20% for those of you keeping score, to Russia. We will see a lot of this alteration or denial of the facts as they become distasteful to the narrative. CNN says Nancy Sinatra's pissed off about Trump playing a Frank song at the inauguration. Yet, alas, no one informed Miss Sinatra she was supposed to be pissed off. But someone would have told her. This one happened just the other day and illustrates even news sources most of us still think have some integrity often don't and need to be questioned. The Associated Press claimed that Trump mobilized 100,000 National Guardsmen to round up and presumably deport illegal migrants. This was patently false and was denied by the White House. Just goes to show you, no one is outside the realm of being susceptible for falling for a fake news narrative, particularly when that narrative is anti-Trump, being divisive as he is as a president. I mean, I will say this as a Trump supporter. He definitely has a love him or hate him factor to him. And the people that hate him, they hate him and are willing to do anything to stop him. And speaking of that, I mean, this isn't news, and I know this video is going to be long as it is, but at this point, fuck it. Today this video was brought to my attention. It is an absolutely disgusting and repugnant display of virtue signaling where a Jewish Swede begs Trump to resign. We are officially in the bargaining stage of grief. I want to do a whole video on the left going through the 5 stages of grief. By the way, because while I have actually worked in a PR contract with a bereavement center and know the 5 stages of grief are bunk and based on zero hard data, the left sure seems to be mimicking them. Anyway, onto this cuckmaster.
Mr. President, I will post this on the internet, and God willingly, it will reach you. My name is Stefan Einhorn. I'm a native of Sweden, the country my parents came to after having survived the Holocaust. Their experience is my heritage. This I know. Fear is the cancer of wisdom, and fear is now spreading around the world. And in a world without wisdom, there are no survivors. Mr. President, it doesn't matter what brought us to this point, but for the sake of your children, your children's children, and the children of the world, please step down. If you do so, you will be a great example for generations to come, and will be forever blessed. Mr. President, you hold in your hand the future of the world, so I respectfully ask you, please step down.
This is where we are at. This guy using a bunch of appeals to authority with his PhD, fucko, you don't see me bragging, bringing up the Holocaust totally out of context, and just pleading with the President of the United States to abdicate. I'm only playing this to show you. This is where we are. This is how the average person at CNN probably thinks. Anyway, moving on. My goodness, this one is so funny. So sometimes fake news is lies or spin. But sometimes it's just reporting on nothing to help maintain their narrative. In this case, that Trump is mean and naughty. Trump made Chris Christie try the White House meatloaf, aka he ordered the meatloaf for himself and for Christie, and the New York Post reports this like Trump assaulted Christie's mouth with his meatloaf. Holy shit, this is too funny. You cannot even make it up if you tried. Okay, I've got a couple of these. I remember back during the campaign how absolutely absurd the reporting on the rally sizes was. Look, I watched most of Trump's rallies on Right Side Broadcasting. Not all, because I'm not a damn madman as much as the God Emperor is to do 4 rallies a day, but many. And they were always packed. Meanwhile, Hillary's few and far between rallies were always pretty much empty. It's why when I saw this page from some trash can fat acceptance comic called Faith, an absolute embarrassment to Valiant as a publisher, featuring a football stadium full of Hill Dog fans, I actually laughed out loud. By the way, nothing inherently wrong with fatties in comics. One of my favorite heroines being Fathom Eve, aka Adam Eve, a depressed woman who had an abortion and was dumped by her boyfriend who had to go to space war. That's actually a good excuse for a woman getting fat. But yeah, back to the point. The legacy media would always show equally misrepresentative shots of Trump's audiences as well. Just the opposite way around. This is interesting, but also with no real proof, so I'll cover it here very quickly. Despite being banned in China, the New York Times has seen a huge spike in Chinese readership since December. Could it be that Times is hiding their declining number of readers with Chinese bots? Again, no proof, just a suggestion. I mean, seems they're not the only ones. Washington Post and The Guardian are also seeing surges of Chinese readers. Interesting, if nothing else. Okay, so a couple of outlets claimed that Trump was all up in Hillary's shit during the second debate. Hillary herself claimed on Ellen that he stalked her. So this anon went through the video and found that it was actually Hillary who invaded Trump's side of the stage. But again, these people don't care about the facts. All they care about is their narrative. Trump is big and evil and bad and misogynistic and terrible, and he beat up poor old innocent granny Hillary. Except she's only an innocent old grandma when she doesn't know how to emails and when Trump bullies her. Otherwise, she's a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. As I've said, the goal is to lie and to be as inconsistent as possible to maintain the script. CNN. Is there really anything to say about this one? Blatant hypocrisy. There were tons of outlets saying the election couldn't be hacked until Trump won, then it was hacked. Another one where there's really not much to say, is there? Trump is always wrong about statistics he cites, even when he's right. Trump is wrong, therefore facts we ourselves reported on are wrong. This is a good one to show just how interconnected these journos are. Almost like they're all getting the same script to regurgitate. Trump said many troops can't handle what they've seen and get PTSD and other psychological issues because they have seen horrible things that nobody could believe. And the media reports it as him insulting the troops. Again, lies of omission, lies by twisting his words. There's this hilarious hypocrisy from Slate, who almost 4 years to the date goes from defending the Electoral College to calling it racist white supremacists. Good job, Slate. Just excellent work. Here's Steve Bannon, not to be confused with Steve Bannon, within 10 days going from rebuking the mother of Benghazi victim as the RNC manipulating a woman to celebrating the father of a US Muslim soldier for speaking out at the DNC. Holy hell, could one person be less self-aware? Actually, you know what? Yes, maybe, because I think they are self-aware. They just don't care about it. Since, as we've learned today, their job is to determine what people think, not to accurately report on anything, and they have been taught journalism and ethics, and they just ignore it and spit in the face of morals. Finally, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. This one I think I've shown here before, where the same writer goes from adulating Hillary Clinton's white pantsuit, while mere days before claimed that Melania Trump's white dress was a display of white nationalism. This is where we are, folks. This is the level of corruption in the media. Why? Because by their own admission, this is their job, to control not just what you think about, but what you think. This flagrant disregard of journalistic integrity and ethics should show you how dire the situation is in the legacy media, knowing that they know what they are doing is wrong, because they have been taught that it is wrong. They've had to take tests that it is wrong. In order to get their degree, they had to learn, do not do what you are doing. And this is where you and me and every one of us comes into it. We have the capacity, because of the internet, because of new media, to destroy the legacy media. I know I've played it before, but this is how they need to be treated. Ignore them, look away, and let them be forgotten. Let them fade into nothing.
What are you doing?
You can't fight us or frighten us, you're just not important enough anymore. We forget you, Queen Mab. Go join your sister in the lake and be forgotten. It was the smile of desolation. Inside, I felt only the pity and the terror and the waste of it all.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Aiden Paladin, Altana Volt.